There is a sound I have come to dread more than any other. It is not the howl of the wind on a winter's night, nor the distant rumble of thunder. It is the sound of my own front door closing behind me, the click of the latch, the sigh of the hinges. It is the sound that marks the beginning of the silence. You see, this house is too big for one person. It's full of the ghosts of a life I was supposed to have, echoes of laughter that has long since faded. I live alone, and in the quiet, my mind has a tendency to wander to places I'd rather it not go, to regrets, to missed chances, to the haunting question of what if. It was on one such evening, a Tuesday I think, with a cold rain tapping insistently against the window panes, that I found it. I was in the attic, a place I usually avoided. It was a tomb of memory, filled with sheet-draped furniture and cardboard boxes that held the artifacts of my past. I was looking for an old photograph, something to remind me of a sunnier time, when my hand brushed against a small, heavy chest made of dark wood, tucked away in the farthest, darkest corner. I didn't remember it. The lock was old and rusted, and it gave way with a single, sharp blow from a hammer. The air inside was stale, smelling of cedar and forgotten years. And there, resting on a bundle of yellowed letters tied with a faded ribbon, was a journal. It wasn't mine. The leather cover was soft and worn, and when I opened it, a single sheet of paper, brittle at the edges, fluttered to the floor. I picked it up. It was a list. No name, no date. Just a series of 10 items, written in a precise, elegant script, with faded black ink. Listen to the silence in the old quarry at dawn. Return the book to the library on Elm Street. It is 20 years overdue. Tell Samuel the truth about the fire. Place wild flowers on a grave that has none. Find the street musician who plays the violin, and truly listen. Dance in the fountain at King's Square, just once. Learn the name of the moon. Forgive Eleanor. Build a castle in the sand, and let the tide take it. Whisper a secret into the heart of an ancient tree. A strange chill, completely separate from the attic's cold, traced a path down my spine. This was no ordinary to-do list. It was a confession. A map of a soul. It felt intimate, profound, and deeply, unsettlingly sad. Who wrote this, and why was it hidden away in my attic? The first item called to me. Listen to the silence in the old quarry at dawn. The old quarry was a place we were warned about as children, a deep, flooded scar on the landscape, a place of danger, and according to local legend, tragedy. I couldn't explain it, but I felt a compulsion, a pull I did not understand. I had to go. The next morning, hours before the sun would even think of rising, I drove to the quarry. The world was a study in shades of blue and black. The air was bitingly cold. I stood at the edge, looking down into the abyss of black water, and I waited. As the first sliver of sun breached the horizon, spilling liquid gold across the water, something happened. The world went utterly, profoundly silent. Not just quiet, but a deep, resonant silence that seemed to swallow all sound, all thought. It was a silence you could feel in your bones. And in that silence, I didn't hear a ghost, but I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a yearning so sharp it was almost a physical pain. I was listening to someone else's silence, and it was the loneliest sound I had ever heard. The second task felt simpler. Return the book to the library on Elm Street. The library was still there, a beautiful old building that smelled of paper and polish. The book in question, a collection of poetry, was tucked inside the journal. I walked to the returns desk, my heart pounding strangely. The librarian, a kind-faced woman with spectacles, took the book. She scanned it, and her smile faltered. She looked at the screen, then at the book, then at me. This book was checked out. Over 20 years ago, she said, her voice a mixture of awe and confusion. By a young woman named Clara Evans. Clara Evans. The name meant nothing to me, but it echoed in my mind. I simply nodded and left, feeling as if I had just corrected a tiny, long-forgotten kink. In the universe, the list began to consume me. It became my secret purpose. Place wildflowers on a grave that has none. I spent an afternoon in the oldest part of the town cemetery, looking for a headstone so weathered it was nameless. I found one, a small tilting stone, and laid a bunch of bluebells against it. It felt right. Find the street musician who plays the violin, and truly listen. I found him under the railway bridge, a man with a face etched by the elements, playing a piece so heartbreakingly beautiful it brought tears to my eyes. I didn't just hear the music, I felt it. I felt the story he was telling of loss and resilience. I dropped a $20 bill in his case, but more than that, I gave him my full, undivided attention. He nodded to me, a silent understanding passing between us. Each task was a puzzle, a small act of penance or poetry that wasn't mine. I was living a stranger's unfinished life. I learned that learning the name of the moon wasn't an astronomical quest, but about sitting with an elderly neighbor, a woman who was once an astronomy professor, and listening as she lovingly spoke the names of the craters and seas on the lunar surface. She just wanted someone to remember the stories with her. But then came the harder tasks. Tell Samuel the truth about the fire. I asked around, discreetly. Samuel Miller was an old man who lived on the outskirts of town. He'd lost his workshop to a fire decades ago, a fire everyone thought was caused by faulty wiring. I went to see him, my palms sweating. I didn't know what to say. I just stood on his porch and said, "Clara Evans sent me, she said to tell you." It was a candle. She left the candle burning in the back room. The old man's face crumpled. He didn't get angry. He just sank into his chair and wept. Not tears of anger, but of release. "I always wondered," he whispered. "Thank you for ending the wondering. And forgive Eleanor." I discovered Eleanor was Clara's mother. She was in a nursing home, her mind lost to the fog of dementia. She didn't know who I was. I sat with her, held her hand, and said the words anyway. "Clara forgives you." I didn't know what for, and I would never know. But the woman, in a moment of shocking clarity, looked at me, and her eyes filled with a peace so profound it lit up the entire room. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "She finally got my message." That's when I understood. The chest, the journal, it wasn't left there by accident. It was a message. A mother's final, desperate message to a daughter who had run away from home. From her regrets, from a life that had become too painful. A daughter named Clara, who had left and never come back. Clara, who was my aunt. A woman I had never met. A secret my family had buried, along with their shame. I was her messenger, a messenger decades too late. I completed the final tasks with a new, heavy understanding. I danced, alone, and laughing and crying, in the fountain at King's Square. I built an elaborate sandcastle on the beach and watched as the incoming tide patiently, inexorably, erased it from existence. A lesson in impermanence. And finally, I went to the ancient oak tree in the woods behind my house, the one I had climbed as a child. I pressed my hand against its rough bark, leaned in close, and I whispered my own secret, my own greatest regret, into its silent keeping heart. The list was complete. The haunting should have been over, but it wasn't. The true haunting wasn't a ghost in the traditional sense. It wasn't a specter or a poltergeist. The thing that haunts me to this day is the profound, devastating beauty of a life unfinished. It is the echo of Clara's regrets.